Okay, Pete and I had some things we didn't quite cover. We're just going to have a bit more of a conversation about those now. And there were some questions that came through about some specific examples of companies that are doing it well or brands that are doing it well. And also, Pete's got some insights in during the GFC, there were some organisations or brands that didn't do well. We won't name names, but we'll talk about some of the aspects of that. And I'm going to try and not use the word unprecedented in this particular. All right, so some brands, this is some examples of stuff that you sent me, Pete, that was really interesting. Unilever announces commitment to provide free soap, sanitizer, bleach and food to the value of 100 million euros to consumers and communities around the world. KFC partnered with not-for-profit Blessings in a Backpack to help provide weekend meals to kids. Kraft Heinz announced that it was donating 12 million in support of communities impacted by COVID-19 outbreak. Microsoft has worked with CDC to create a chatbot. Nestle, Ford, Nike, U-Haul, Universal, Headspace. Where's one that people might Zoom, Audible I spoke about. And then I believe Netflix have put 100 million US into the creative community, given the challenge they're going to have. So lots of brands have responded well, very proactively.
And I think they've taken a long-term view to how they can be useful now in a way that benefits their brand long-term but serves people now. Now, Zoom is an example, and most of the platforms have done the same thing, where they've said, well, usually if you're a free user, we cut you off at 40 minutes.
Yep.
Now, a short-term view would be to hold that, because the market indicators would suggest there's going to be more people in the market for video conferencing than ever before, and they will be forced into buying our subscriptions because they're in the market's presenting itself. The problem with that is that people have less money to spend on subscriptions that they didn't otherwise have than ever before. So Zoom have said, you know what we'll do is we'll scrap that and we'll allow people to use the platform for as long as they need to on the free subscription. Of course, as a premium subscriber, you get a whole heap of other things anyway, so it doesn't discredit you as a premium subscriber. But it's smart because it's going to get more people using Zoom and relying on it long term. So that's an example of being really useful right now in a way that's going to build the brand. And different brands play it in a different way. Some brands are in the business, firstly, some of those examples were corporations. Unilever is a global corporation. It has a responsibility to serve all of its brands by doing good in certain aspects, and it has diverted that good doing to a place that's really important right now. Twiggy Forrest has done the same thing overnight with his mask. Now, these corporations have through the construct of their businesses foundations that do this with this money. So it's not about even necessarily spending more money than you would otherwise do. It's just doing it in a way that's really useful. And I think at a micro level, we can still take lessons from that.
So maybe if we can revisit one of the questions, which was examples of companies or brands or businesses not doing it well. We won't name names, but we can reflect back to the GFC, and you've got some sense of those, some examples of that you could maybe unpack for us a bit.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the GFC is the best. Although we are in uncharted territories, it is the best indicator to how brands may pull out and pull through this. The biggest thing we saw in the GFC was the way that brands behaved during it informed the way that consumers would expect to see them perform after it. The best example was probably in the retail sector, where we had, before the GFC, a big group of probably slightly too heavy, slightly too slow, slightly too expensive brands, retailers. And so there needed to be an attrition. There needed to be a moment of truth for a lot of those brands that didn't deserve to be in the world the way they were in the world then. So that sorted it out. But the ones that were useful to clients and customers still had a choice to make on how they did business through that period. We saw some go on discount. And the GFC was a long thing. It was longer than what this will be, I suspect. But those brands that heavily discounted have, in the 10 years following, set themselves up to be a discount brand.
Yeah.
There are retailers, clothing retailers, for instance, that you now just expect to be 25% off. Before the GFC, that wasn't the case, and they set a precedent for themselves to be a brand that should be on discount if you're going to buy something there, and they have had to trade through that for that time. There's a lesson in that for all businesses and brands. You know, we've talked about it ourselves. We've talked about it with clients. Do you go out right now and say, "Hey, we'll do stuff for half rate"? And short term, tactically, there is a benefit to that. But there's a massive erosion to the brand in doing that, and it discredits the work that you're doing with clients who are paying full odds and see the value in doing that. So I would say use all other levers, unless you're a discount brand. And discount brands are an absolutely valuable and viable strategy in the market. They should discount. They should discount their way right through this thing. But if you are not a discounter or a discount brand, be really careful utilising that in any kind of long-term way. Think about how you can add value to promote the business more so than discounting the bottom line of it.
So it's been a thing that we just keep coming back to the values of what it is that you do.
Totally.
And the more we talk about this, if we get the fundamentals right, everyone's going to recalibrate. That's a given.
Yeah. But
recalibration doesn't mean throwing away who you are or what you do, does
Totally.
it? So it's still important to do that, and some of these corporations obviously got the means to do that, but as you say, many of them are just repurposing their goodwill in a way that is useful. And I guess for us collaborating here, there is a lot of goodwill. People are human and they're human response. We spoke about the difference between government and the macro elements of this versus the compassion or the empathy that all of us have naturally to respond in a human way. Businesses can do that as well.
Totally, and I think the more human we can be right now, the better. One of the questions that we haven't quite got to was, how do you stand out at the moment in all of this noise? And the first thing I would say is read what it is you're about to put out, and if you think any of it could be written or published by the government, change what you're writing. Because the world does not need the use of any more of the use of words like unprecedented, tricky, uncertain. There is absolute overuse of all of those phrases, which are now meaning nothing to people because they've been so overused. The world does not need brands coming out telling them that we are navigating uncertain times. Of course we are navigating uncertain times. That was an appropriate thing to say to people, depending on where you are in the world, 6 weeks ago. So we need to be as human as possible and work out or look at the values of the brand and respond to the market in a way that's totally in line with the way you would expect that brand to speak if it was a person.
Very true. Pete, is there anything else we didn't cover today, or were there any other questions that you thought might be useful to resolve that we didn't cover in our conversation?
No, I think I was.
We've done it.
Unless there's something that.
No. I think it's a great point to finish. One of the reflections that I had that I wanted to cover at the end, I think I'll just find it here, was kind of where we concluded there, in that. I think it's a quote from the Ogilvy report, which we'll share. Thank you for that. It's open access, and the hashtag that they've created is hashtag we will remember these brands, which I thought was pretty good. And that what they've said is, so this is a decisive moment that will perhaps define a business and their brand for perhaps years to come. People trust businesses more than government at the moment, so it's a phenomenon, isn't it, at this time? All right, we're going to cut out there with the extras. Again, I want to thank Pete, I want to thank the boys from Fortronic, and I want to thank the team here at the Business Centre. Thank you very much. Thanks.